Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a Thursday morning at 7 a.m., which means moi, Fikile Mbalula, is on your screens for another episode of Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. Welcome to it. Remember, if you want to get in touch with us here at the Big Daddy Liberty Show, then it's an easy peasy, bigdaddyliberty.com. Find us on that website, where, of course, you can pledge some support. Guys, grow the number of subscribers who are pledging 100 Rand a month towards the show. It helps us hire the people, of course, who will help us build an alternative news outlet. That's what we're looking to do, and your support is instrumental in that regard. Remember, we help begin your news day here at Vuka Nazo, but our friends over at the Daily Friend, yes, that's right, they come to you live Monday to Thursday at 1:30 p.m. That's dailyfriend.co.za. Now, with that being said, enough with the jibber jabber. Let's get straight into the news. Okay, I take you now to the Cape, where you'll remember there are issues with long-distance travel or long-distance transport sector in that part of the world, where buses, long-distance buses, specifically the Intercape liners, had come under attack by effectively thuggish taxi associations who are trying to muscle in and dictate what and who can operate on long-distance routes that run from the Western Cape to the Eastern Cape, and indeed that part of the world broadly beyond those two provinces. It had gotten to a point where not only were Intercape buses physically attacked, but also a bus driver at some stage had been murdered as these buses came and still are under sustained attack. Now, you'll expect in a situation like this that the government would play what is the government's role, which is to be a referee in a free market. Not to be a player, not to be a distorter of markets, but actual referee who enforces law and order. That's what you'd expected to happen. But no, not in this country, unfortunately, where it actually took Intercape going to court to seek relief for the court to then mandate that within 20 days, Fikile Mbalula, the Minister of Transport, yes, that lout,
I've got to be higgy there,
to honor this court order and actually get to work and protect all role players in the transport sector. But oh no, Fikile Mbalula, instead of enacting what the court required, which was an action plan within 20 days. Oh no, that lout of a transport minister has decided to actually appeal this rather logical ruling. Let me read from the Daily Maverick, which covered the story and wrote it up as follows. Now, the court directed Mbalula, you remember, and the Eastern Cape MEC for Transport, a one Olile Edmund Ngata, that they must, within 20 days, develop a comprehensive action plan in consultation with the police. The judge also ruled that the former Eastern Cape Transport MEC, Ewan Weziwe Tikana Otiwe, acted, quote, unlawfully when she required Intercape on the 27th of May 2022 to, quote, engage in negotiations with representatives of the minibus taxi industry for purposes of regulating the price, frequency of time of Intercape services in the Eastern Cape and suspend its services pending the outcomes of those negotiations, end of quote. Can you imagine that situation where a bus company comes to you, the referee, and instead of you, the referee, playing your role, you then tell that player, oh no, you must go to the thugs, the bullies, and expect them to dictate how you run your business as their competitor. That is anti-competitive, it is anti-market, it's anti-capitalist in its nature, and speaks to the nature of how our politicians in this country, the political elites, are simply failures. Even at what is their responsibility, they are simply failures at that. Now, in all of this, you're probably wondering, well, where are the police? Leave aside the lout of a transport minister, Fikile Mbalula, and the useless MEC of transport in the Eastern Cape. Where are the police in all of this? Well, the police are seemingly also aware of this action. Indeed, if I go back to the Daily Maverick piece, they're quoted as having said the following. Now, Colonel Priscilla Naidu of the SAP's Eastern Cape has indicated that the police are aware of the court order and are, quote, busy studying it. The same applies, of course, to the Eastern Cape's MEC for Transport. Now, the court found that the violence endured by Intercape, of course, was not random, but was part of a deliberate strategy on the part of certain taxi associations to intimidate and coerce Intercape into agreeing to the unlawful demand of the taxi associations. When Intercape refused, as they rightly did and should have, refused to accede to these demands, it was met with further acts of violence directed at its buses, drivers, and passengers. The instigators then created, quote, no-go zones. Can you imagine that? Making it impossible for the company to operate in places like Offenbaba, Butterworth, Engcobo, Tsomo, and Ituja, end of quote. Now, this is where I want to end this one. You read the story, and I need you to understand that there is a broader context here and a broader situation. This country is being taken over by effective bullies, gangs, and indeed these cartels, in a sense. Much like the Mexicans have, these drug cartels in that part of the world who are becoming stronger and have, in that part of the world at least, become stronger than the state, indeed taking the state on directly. You're seeing the same thing develop here, where effectively these cartel-like organizations, these mafia-like organizations, whether they were in the taxi industry or the construction cartel or any other of these extortionate rings, are beginning to flex their power. Why? Because the state has left a vacuum. The state, I'll repeat this, the politicians and the political elites of what is their responsibility, that is enforcing law and order, have left that vacuum, and that vacuum will be filled by the criminals. Now, what you need to understand here, very briefly, and I'll be very brief, is that the failure of the state to protect one segment of the transport industry will have massive repercussions for the safety of commuters in particular. Remember, we're heading towards the festive season where a lot of people choose Intercape buses and the like. And if the state doesn't play its role to protect them now, goodness me, Lord knows what the situation will look like if these buses are attacked at the peak festive season. All right, I take you now to Durban, perhaps, in a sense, very close to home for me as that may be, where, if you remember, we've been discussing on Vuka Nazo the spectre, the real risk of terrorism in this country, both homegrown and, of course, international terror groupings that are using South Africa as not only as a home base, a transit area, but also a financier of their evil activities. If you want a reminder of that particular episode of Vuka Nazo, it's right over here, episode 63 of the show, that special report we did on terrorism in South Africa. Here's an update, in a sense, which only exemplifies the point we made on that show, that South Africa is becoming a conduit for terrorist organization, especially radical Islamic terrorism that is finding a root in this country, often targeting not only South Africans and people of other parts of the world, but also targeting local Muslim communities in this country. Nonetheless, as I mentioned, the latest, of course, being the US Treasury Department flagging how it is sanctioning 4 individuals and 8 companies that are said to be effectively operating in ISIS cells, in Durban. Let me read from this News 24 piece, which wrote this up quite eloquently. In a statement, the department, that's the US Treasury, said it was targeting individuals linked to a man that the US believes is leading an Islamic State cell in Durban. The man was among those arrested in 2018 over an attack at a mosque in Verulam. You remember that incident? Outside of Durban, and was also accused of planting explosive devices around Durban. The case itself was struck off the roll in 2020 amid delays from prosecutors. Unbelievable, according to reports. End of quote. Now, again, I read this and it's only for me to bring to the fore a reminder that this country is in a lot of trouble because our own intelligence services in this country are woefully unprepared for what is clearly happening under their noses. The fact that the US is playing at times, insofar as the PR at least, a leading voice in pointing out some of those activities should have us as South Africans very worried about our own state of intelligence services in this country. Maybe they should stop fighting ANC internal battles and get their heads into the game insofar as dealing with the terrorism and the threat of terrorism that we face as South Africans. Oh man. the Afro-nationalist kleptocrats and the red in tooth and claw commies couldn't come to a deal. Mwah, mwah. Cue the Mickey laugh. Well, there you go. That's the news, dear folks. Tanya Campbell, the DA's leader of what was the Ekurhuleni coalition, is back in office. She was all smiles, of course, after not only the motion of confidence after she was ousted initially a month ago by a motion of no confidence, but this time back in the hot seat as mayor after the ANC and the EFF, guys who were negotiating for well over a month, leaving Ekurhuleni leadership lists, of course, for the past month, with Ekurhuleni as a municipality, a metro, and its issues piling up. You'll remember we spoke in the previous Vuka Nazo, episode 69, right over there. Make sure you see that if you didn't watch it. And of course, residents in that part of the world getting really frustrated. Well, in a turn of events, it seems the negotiations between the EFF and ANC, insofar as how and who becomes mayor, fell apart. Let me read from EWN, which captured perhaps what exactly happened and what led to Tanya Campbell, the DA's candidate, coming back into the ascendancy, indeed even supported by the EFF. Oh, how's that for funny turn of events? The article reading as follows. That the ANC regional chairperson, that's Mzwandile Masina, said on Tuesday that the demands that the EFF made during negotiations were, quote, unreasonable. It's understood that the two parties negotiated well into the crack of dawn ahead of the vote for a new mayor without finding common ground. Now, IWN, or Eyewitness News, understands that the EFF actually wanted to govern Ekurhuleni alone and in turn support the ANC to do the same in Johannesburg, end of quote. Now, you'll remember, of course, with that last particular quote, that, of course, there is a motion of no confidence having been tabled against Mpho Phalatse, another one against the Johannesburg executive mayor. And that's clearly, if one is to understand from the jostling and the negotiation here, what was being proposed by the EFF. You give us Ekurhuleni, the commies said, and we'll give you Johannesburg as the, Afro-nationalist kleptocrats, crony, corrupt douchebags that you are. Ha! Well, that axis of evil falling apart. Thankfully, perhaps, on behalf of the residents of both Joburg and Ekurhuleni. This doesn't mean, of course, as I've argued before, that these coalitions are now more stable or will be less prone to this kind of jostling. That stuff will still happen. Perhaps, though, in this instance, a sigh of relief for residents of Ekurhuleni. All right, that's it for this episode of Vuka Nazo. This is the Thursday edition of the show. Remember, I'll see you again tomorrow, bright and early, for the Friday edition, where we're going to have either two champs of the week, as I proposed and I promised on Monday, or two mumishes of the week. Look forward to that. That will be tomorrow on Vuka Nazo. Until then, find us on our website at I nearly said it. Find us on our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can pledge some support towards the show. With that being said, thanks for watching this episode. I'll see you tomorrow, only on Vuka Nazo.